You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Hi, everyone. We're back at Stellar Success Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Dr. Tudor Francu, and I have a great guest today, Dr. Naim El-Aswad, all the way from Houston, Texas. How are you, Doc?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for coming over.
Thank you for having me.
You are someone who not only embraced the medical profession, but you started to venture into coaching other people of how to deal with it. Can you tell us a little bit about your history, how you started in this, what made you choose this path, and where are you now?
Well, again, first, thanks for having me. Sure, I've been practicing internal medicine and emergency medicine since 2002. So both specialties, pretty high in burnout. And I discovered at one time that I had symptoms of anger while doing my job. And so I paused and I was asking myself why I was angry when I'm going to see patients. And that's where my curiosity started. It's just, how did I go from, the humanitarian aspect of being a physician, wanting to help people, to being angry at people? So that created the question in my mind of what took me from point A to point B. And then I started studying, and in the true internal medicine Sherlock Holmes approach, I started to look at, first I identified my symptoms, then I identified the diagnosis. I said, all right, this is burnout. And then the next question was, what's the pathophysiology? Then the next question is, okay, well, what can I do about it? And so that took years, because when I noticed back in 2006, there wasn't much literature about burnout in terms of what can be done or what is present in the healthcare industry. And then one day, my wife, she's a coach, and I was with her on a trip, and she was teaching at a coaching college, and I was sitting down with 7 world-renowned coaches. They're like top coaches in the world, and they were talking and discussing and so on and so forth. So they asked me about, how as an ER physician, how do I do it? And then when I discussed a little bit of what we do, they start having a conversation about, oh, that's interesting how physician minds are, yada, yada, yada. And then I saw the answer of the key to intervene, which is coaching. So since 2014, medicine is a prove-it science or prove-it profession. I started to research, publish, teach, and it's taken me from 2014 till today, and I continuously do so. So that's, in a nutshell, my journey into the world of coaching. So 50% of my life is physician, 50% of my life is physicians.
Yeah, so you practice 50% of your life, and then you coach the other 50% of your life how to practice better, correct?
Yes. How to survive, how to thrive on a personal and professional level. Yes.
Right. Yeah, this is a huge issue in our profession, and I think people are probably afraid of talking about it, and kind of internalize their feelings about it, and they just go on and on for years without telling anyone. And then all of a sudden they face a big dilemma of what can we do in a burnout situation. And, sometimes what I've seen is people just collapse mentally, physically, socially. And there are certain specialties known for having high rates of suicide because of that. What do you think is the most important thing people should be aware of before getting to that point?
That it exists, that it is real, and that burnout is an organic brain disease, no different than a stroke. One of the stigmas is that because it's mental health, right? So we are trained in the thought process of, first you have to be superhuman, never show any weakness, you have to be perfect all the time. And so if you show any weakness, or if you make a mistake, you either don't belong, you're the worst person on the planet. And we are the hardest people on ourselves. We demand that perfection from ourselves. So that people understand that it is real, it does exist, and that they understand the pathophysiology, they would have compassion to themselves first and foremost. I always ask my audience, and whether I've lectured to students, residents, fellows, attendings, and so on and so forth. So to those who are in the field, I asked them if they remember the day they got the acceptance letter in med school, and they all, and I asked them to describe one word, and it's excitement, it's elation, it's joy, it's relief, it's, happiness. And then we fast forward, and I asked them, and I showed them a suicide letter. And to your point, the rate of suicide among physicians is one physician a day commits suicide because of burnout. So I asked them, what do you think the journey, how do you think, or what do you think happens to the brain that takes you from all of that excitement from day one to suicide making sense to that person? What do you think has to happen to the brain? And they pause because this is true pathology. And that's where they start to understand. And as soon as they understand that this is a true disease, like a stroke, like I said, or cancer, then they start to have compassion for themselves. Then they start to say, you know what, it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, accepting a diagnosis is the first step of treating it. How do you think you're successful in what you're doing right now? How would you define your success for the past 10 years?
I understand the physician mindset. I understand how we think. So I understand the barriers for us to accept that there's something wrong, or like you said, or to acknowledge. And so many physicians have people telling them, hey, do this or do that. And this is how you prevent burnout. You got to sleep, you have to exercise, you have to take care of yourself, and so on and so forth. And physicians don't want to hear it because they already know that. And the other thing is, so in discussing anything with physicians, you have to give them the information and they have to come up with a conclusion on their own. And when you lay down the information in a matter of fact, saying, data, then they can't argue with that data because they'll be antagonizing their own selves. That's what they use. That's their modus operandi. And so once that happens, the next step is to, okay, you know what, I might have this. And next step is to acknowledge. And when they see the commonality of this illness, the pandemic that is burnout, that they're not the only ones, then they're like I said, they have compassion for themselves and they're understanding that it's not just me. Furthermore, I know the person next to me is burnt out. I know that person is burnt out because I see how they react or how they act. And now it's like you call people out because you're calling out yourself. And then there's a sigh of relief in my conversation, my presentation. Like, wait a second, okay, I'm letting my guard down. We all have this. It's like, everybody take off your clothes. Do you see all that rash that you have? Everybody has that rash. So stop ignoring it. And that's where people now decide, okay, this is serious. And then the key is to give them ownership. Because it's one thing to tell them, here's what's wrong. It's another thing to tell them, here's how you fix it. And we are fixers. Since physicians are deficit-based thinkers, that's how we learn. We learn to look for what's wrong and to do something about it. We always want to do. We never just want to be. We want to do, we want to do, we want to do. So, all right, here's the problem. Great. What do I do about it? Here's the solution. Fantastic. I'll take it from there. And that's the key to success, because then every solution is a personalized approach. The formula might be the same variables, but the application is personal. And so people come up with their own.
You basically
values.
apply in your treatment, you apply a certain formula that is personalized to that specific case.
Correct. And in true to form of coaching, you never tell the person in front of you, this is what's wrong, or this is your challenge. They come up with it. And then at the very core of combating burnout is to answer the question, how? And then when you help physicians determine their how and find out their how, they don't need anything else. They'll take it and run with it, and they become very successful at it.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. I want to kind of go back a little bit into your personal journey to get to this point. You mentioned you were facing a burnout in your life, and I'm sure as successful you are right now, you probably had some setbacks or failures along the way to get you to this point. Can you give us an example of anything that comes to mind that kind of didn't work out, put you back on your feet and keep going?
So a couple of things. The first thing, well, there are a multitude of factors, but there's a level of acceptance that you have to have. And that level of acceptance does not come during our training. It comes during hard times when you fail as a physician. And then how do you deal with it? Because we are isolationists. We are trained to be independent and not to seek help and not to accept any support. So there was a level of um, acceptance of my own limitations. Am I responsible for morbidity and mortality of other people? Of course I am. I'm human. I made mistakes. Um, and to accept that. The other part is there's a level of humility, I think, that we need to keep in mind, where we have to understand that things can be bigger than us, can be greater than us, can be overwhelming, and it's okay. Um, and so, from a personal experience, dealing with failures, dealing with not being able to achieve, um, it started there. And learning to have that compassion and keeping my expectations realistic. We keep saying, hey, to err is human. Okay, but what are we? Before we're physicians, we're human. So how do you make that connection? How do you keep that? Um, and then really practicing what I preach. Once I understood what needs to happen, I just practice what I preach. So I work in the ER. I've been working in the ER since, like I said, 2002. It's been 23 years. I've never screamed. I've never yelled. I've never been angry. I've never cussed. Um, Even though I felt anger at a patient, I've never showed anger. I've always been even keel. People don't know if like, I'm always the same, no matter what's in front of me. And that comes from the idea that mindset shift where life isn't what happens to me, life is what I make happen. So once I decide, okay, let me take control. I can't control what's coming at me. Then let me control what I can control, which is myself. I made that mindset shift. And therefore, I don't care much about the environment, what's coming, because I can't control that. I can control how I react.
This is a very important thing that people can only reach this kind of conclusion after they have a light bulb opening up in their life, because it's very hard. It's, by nature we're reactive
Correct. Right.
individuals, so we react to what happens to us instead of, like you said, taking everything in and try to come up with a reaction from inside of you, of how you perceive the things and how you want to react to this. But it takes a while to learn this behavior. What do people? How do you coach people to learn that behavior?
That's a very good question. So learning that behavior, well, I use a tool, and the tool wasn't by me. It's developed by Stephen Covey in one of his books. You might have heard he's a fantastic author. But he describes what we call a circle of influence, a circle of concern in his book, The 7 Habits of Powerful People or Successful People. And usually what I tell once first they accept that concept that, okay, there are two things that you can look at, the two ways you can look. Um, and to have them adapt the idea that I will be responsible for what's happened, or I will be able to be proactive regardless of what's coming at me. Once they understand that they can do that, then I show them the tool of the circle of influence, the circle of concern, and then the circle of focus. So I tell them, okay, it's one of the exercises we do. I say, all right, name 10 things that actually um, impact your life, whatever they are, whether it's your morning traffic, whether it's people and their reaction to your vaccines or what you tell them, whether it's the global warming, whatever it is, name 10 things. Whether it's your scheduling, what the institution wants you to do, whatever constraints you have, and whatever 10 challenges you might think of. And then I have them divide. I ask them, okay, which one of these 10 things you have zero control over? I said, okay, put them in your circle of concern. They concern you, but you can do nothing about them. Okay. Now, which ones you can actually impact, like your schedule, for example, your time with your family, your health, the charts, the pre-authorization form, whatever they are, put them in the circle of influence. Now, once they make that separation, I say, all right, there's a relief, there's a sigh of relief, because they acknowledge they let go of things they can't control. And control is very important for physicians, for humanity, for people, for animals, everybody. Control is very important. Controlled stress is a positive, uncontrolled stress is a negative. So once they identify things, then I say, all right, take one of those things in the circle of influence, put it in the circle of focus. What do you want to do with it? This is where coaching also happens. Okay, what's your challenge? For example, I want to be able to exercise 3 times a week. Okay, all right, so that's your target. What's your idea? How are you going to do this? Then you follow a coaching model. If this is your target, what are your ideas? What are your barriers and challenges? And what are your action steps? And whether I'm doing it in front of a group or one-on-one, the beautiful part about it is they come up with their own solutions. And true to the form of coaching, they hold themselves and you hold them accountable. And the beautiful part of it is, okay, you know what? Nobody gave me advice. This is my issue. I came up with the solution, and we go dive deep into everything that might actually stop them from doing it. And then they come up with the solution, and it's an actionable step, and then they go and do it.
Yeah. It's probably the most efficient kind of treatment for someone to make them, understand it has to come from inside.
Yes.
And you also said that you practice what you preach. So I want to kind of ask you what things you incorporate in your daily life, habits, routines, protocols that you have right now to overcome these issues.
First, I'd like to say that I am not perfect. So I'll have bad days and I'll have good days. Um, so I prioritize, I I schedule my priorities rather than prioritize my schedule. Again, that's Stephen Covey. And when I wake up every day, I look at my challenges, or it's a mindset when I go to work. I have a running commentary in my head, and I talk about emotional intelligence and how emotional intelligence is a tool that you use to, in a nutshell, emotional intelligence is understanding yourself, managing yourself, understanding others, managing others. So how do you use emotional intelligence, and how do you use it to help yourself grow, protect yourself, um, heal yourself, be kind to yourself, so on and so forth. So over the years, I have developed a running commentary in my mind where I'm continuously scanning my brain to see if I'm angry, if I'm upset, what my emotions are. And I'll quickly give you an analogy to people who have hypertension. And we go through this exercise also with folks. I say, all right, when people have hypertension, we call it a silent assessment for a reason. By the time people show up, they have a stroke, they have a heart attack, but sometimes they have symptoms like headache or dizziness or ringing in the ear or what have you. They show up and then they discover, okay, my blood pressure is high. Well, the first thing they notice their physical symptoms. Then we tell them, how do you diagnose your blood pressure? Ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. They're measuring their blood pressure twice a day for 7 days and so on and so forth. And over a period of 6 months to 8 months, people go from being completely oblivious that they have hypertension to actually predicting their blood pressure within like 10 millimeters. People who know their blood pressure say, you know what? I know my blood pressure is high. I bet you if you check my blood pressure, it's going to be this. I feel my blood pressure rising. So there's a journey from complete oblivion, like I have blood pressure, to I'm very sensitive to blood pressure changes. And with that, there is internal knowledge, physical symptoms, emotional changes. Same goes with emotional intelligence. When I tell people, okay, a few times a day, stop and ask yourself the following internal questions. What am I thinking, and what am I feeling, and how did I get here, and where did I get here, and what was my trigger, and how do I get out of this place? And initially it might take them 30 seconds to a minute and a half, but then the more they do it, the more they are automatic, it goes on automatic. They start noticing their emotions changing instantaneously to the point of being able to predict, oh, I'm pretty sure that, I've seen the situation before. I'm going to get upset, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. And now it's preventive. And instead of reactive, it's proactive. So I keep that in mind all the time. And my mindset in the emergency room is different than my mindset at home. Much like a person who was playing sports or training, now you're actually doing it. So during the process, I have a different mindset than when I'm out of it. So I separate. But that takes time to be able to recognize ER brain is different than home brain, family brain. And that it's just that self-awareness, if you will, and the practice. And you practice every day. And no matter how self-aware, you will always surprise yourself.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept you kind of mention in your approach is the fact that, you said in the beginning, doctors in general, we used to go and do stuff. And I feel like one of the most important things for people to understand is that we need to kind of slow down. Slow down not only because we're tired or burnout, but slow down to have time to look within ourselves and find this power to reflect on our life and see what we can change like you said, to control our feelings towards what comes to us. But it's not easy. It's not easy, and people are into this like, routine of doing things and going places and go to work and come home and go to work again and come home. And I remember reading a book from by Bill Gates, and he was like telling people, just take a week, take a month off, and just go and sit somewhere and think about what you're doing and think about your life, what you want from it, and how you react to people, how do you react to things, what kind of feelings do you have. But I wish more people will listen to you and get your advice regarding this, because I think this issue is too much for too many people. You also have an interesting logo behind you. Can you tell us more about that thing?
So the name of our company is called Vital Signs, Vital Skills. So it's a V and an S and a V and an S. Um, One of the first things we notice as physicians are, the patient's vital signs, and the vital signs reflect on what's happening inside. But not only human beings, companies, every businesses, everything has vital signs. Their profit, their loss, their so on and so forth. But inherent within all of us are the vital skills to maintain our vital signs. So we help people identify what their skills are. First, they have to identify their signs. True to medicine, listen to your body or listen to your patient. He is telling you the diagnosis. I tell them, listen to your body. It's telling you the diagnosis. And then what are your skills? And then, so the coaching part is to help people, businesses, leaders, what have you, identify their signs, identify their skills, and how to use their skills to maximize their signs, their vital signs. So that's the logo. Thanks for asking about it.
Yeah, very interesting. So, you know, you got to a point in your career right now that you can kind of prevent burnout within yourself first. Um, but if you, with all the experience you have right now, if you would look back to your own self when you were younger, before you started this, what kind of advice would you give to yourself?
Um, you can't do everything.
You can't. You
You
cannot.
cannot do everything. It's okay to ask for help. Um, don't be a hypocrite. You spend your life telling people who are sick that they need help or who need support. And we spend our life giving support, providing support. And we believe in it. We believe in the importance of our existence for humanity. Um, and we study to live that importance, if you will. And we are just as vulnerable as everybody else. You don't have to do this alone. Um, you are part of a group. Reach out. Don't isolate yourself. And I would also tell people, I would tell myself, that's something I told my wife many, many, many years ago while I was still in biology. We met in the university. I said, if I ever become inhuman by becoming a physician, it's time for me to leave. Um, I would tell myself, I entered med school as a human being. I graduated as a physician. Don't graduate as a physician. You graduate as a human being who practices the profession of medicine. It learn to be instead of just to do.
I like that. Learn to be instead of just to do. Um, what are some projects you're working on? What's 2025 gonna bring to you?
Well, thanks for asking. So it's been a journey to marry the profession of medicine with the profession of coaching. And I recently published with a group of coaches a book about coaching for physicians through Rutledge. My hope is that we can combine these two industries, if you will, because they can benefit each other. They can learn so much from each other. So announcing, if you will, as high, yelling, screaming from the top of the buildings that medicine and coaching, and I'm not the only one who's doing it. So if you look at the literature now, there are many people who advocate for coaching and in medicine, in healthcare, and it's not just for physicians, for nurses, for healthcare executives, everybody. Um, to make the concept of coaching not only agreeable but necessary. People need to see it in medicine and healthcare as a vital part of what we do, and then grow in hopefully the application of what I know to work, what literature has shown to work, what my clients have sworn that works, to help spread the word as much as I can. And like every year, try to help as many people or support as many people as I can. So really just now I'm trying to get these two industries to be inseparable.
Very interesting. So how can people reach out to you and learn more about what you're doing and maybe, get your advice?
So our website, again, thank you for having me and thank you for asking. Our website, which is vitalsciencevitalskills.com. They can go to that website, they can see what we're doing, ask questions, sign up for, email us, reach out. Our website, we graduate coaches. We have a coaching school. So if you're interested in becoming a coach, we can certify you through the ICF, through our curriculum, which is the only curriculum that actually focuses on people coaching physicians and navigating their mindset, so to speak. But that's where they would go. And then listening to your podcast.
Absolutely. That's the first rule. Well, Naim, thank you so much for being here. I hope people will get something out of this interview. And, I'm sure there's some people out there that can use your help. And I certainly advise them to reach out and see your results.
Thank you
so much.
Me. Take care. Thank you.
Are you a busy medical professional striving to excel in life and work? Stellar Success Podcast brings you the habits and insights of top leaders in medicine and beyond. Discover strategies for balance, growth, and fulfillment in every episode. Follow us on Instagram at Stellar Success Podcast for daily inspiration. Start your journey to success today. Subscribe to the YouTube channel now.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.